Hey, this is Dave. I'm here to talk about the Title I Part A allocation formula. This is from the federal government, and this is of interest lately because the federal government also chose to use the Title I allocation formula to distribute our COVID relief funds. And anytime that you use a formula for something that it wasn't intended, there are sometimes unintended consequences to that. And so we're definitely seeing that play out now with those COVID relief funds. But I thought I'd take just a few minutes today to talk about how the allocations work. So what I have here is just our Title I allocations. I just pulled up Muskegon counties, but anybody can get this. The link is in the description of this video. It's also in my February 21 monthly communication, and you can pull this and you can kind of follow along with your own district if you'd like. So I want to talk about all the different things that are kind of going across right here. I'm going to start with these two here. So this is the Title I eligible count and the Title I population ages 5 to 17. And if you were to look at those and kind of compare them to your most recent count or last year's count and your maybe your free and reduced lunch numbers, you'd look at that and you'd say, I have no idea where these numbers came from because they look nothing like our district. A lot of districts will look at it and they'll say, we have more kids than that. We have more kids that are eligible. Or we have a population that's much less than what they're saying our Title I population is. And so those numbers don't come from our student counts. They have nothing to do with count day. They have nothing to do with our free and reduced lunch count numbers. These come from the federal government. So the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Department of Education work together to come up with these numbers. They're based off of census poverty. And then on an annual basis, the U.S. Department of Education runs some sort of algorithm that gives us these numbers. We get a communication every January from MDE about what those new numbers are. And so that came out a little late this year. I think it came out last week. There was a memo that's linked in the description and in the monthly communication. And they say what these numbers will be for you for the next school year. So if you look at those and those numbers are a little higher or a little bit lower, then you'll know that there's going to either have a positive or a negative impact on your Title I allocation. I'm not going to say that that will mean that it will go up or down because we don't know what the total allocation is, but if the numbers are going up, then that's likely to have a positive effect. If the numbers are going down, that's likely to have a negative effect. So looking over into the next column then, it says Title I A poverty percent. That is simply the population divided by the eligible count, and that will give you your percentage, or actually probably the eligible count divided by the population. That's going to give you your Title I poverty percentage. And what that does is that will determine what your hold harmless amount is, first off. And so you see if you have a high poverty, then you're going to have a high hold harmless amount. If you have a very low poverty, then you have a lower hold harmless amount. They go anywhere between 85 and 95%. So what's hold harmless? That means that for the next year, your allocation won't go down any more than 95% of that. So you can look at your allocation, you can look at your hold harmless amount, and you can get a feel for how much that might go down no matter what next year. So that's your hold harmless amount. And then you have your basic grant. And the basic grant takes these numbers and it runs a specific formula that is not in the spreadsheet. So you can't figure out exactly what the formula is, but it's not as simple as a per pupil allocation. But they do use these numbers in conjunction with a bunch of other variables. It comes up with your basic grant. And anybody that has Title I schools gets this basic grant. Then, depending on what your poverty percentage is, will let you know if you are eligible for a concentration grant, a targeted grant, or an EFIG grant. And so you'll see that some of our schools that have a lower poverty percentage don't qualify for a concentration grant. I have full details of that in some documents that I have pasted in the description and in my monthly communication. So much like the basic grant, these all have complicated formulas that run that are not as simple as a per pupil allocation. And those get populated. If you just add across, it's a straight addition problem. You'll get your total allocation. So that is kind of how that allocation works. So what about that census poverty memo that I was talking about earlier? So I have 2 years of the census poverty data here. These are both linked in the description and the monthly communication. And if you look at this, by the way, when you get the memo, the census poverty data is 2 years behind. So in February of 21, or maybe it was late January, we got the memo, but that's the 2019 census poverty data. So if you look at that, we get our ages 5 to 17 poverty and ages 5 to 7 population, just like was on the allocation. So they basically take these numbers and kind of put them straight over. And so I can look between 2019 and the 2018 data, so this year's and last year's data. And I can see that for this highlighted district, there's less students, that algorithm spit out that there's less students in poverty and less students overall in the population. So that would have a negative effect on that district's formula. Again, I'm not saying that their funding is going to go down, because that really depends on how much is allocated overall as well. But that, when you get that memo, that is what that's all about. And so what I always recommend is pull the memo up, pull the last 2 years of data up. And I always put that in my January or February communication. I kind of describe that. And I put links to all the data and the memo. So I think that's about it for today. I hope that that sheds a little bit of light on the Title I allocation, and really why some districts got considerably more COVID relief funds than others, and because it's applied to the Title I allocation, and there are lots and lots of variables that go into that. So that's it for now.